So this is part 2, freedom. Fantastic. Glenn Beck called it the best interview, and we pulled the best clips from it to show you men need to be able to make choices, women need to be able to make choices and build businesses and do what they wish and have free will. And we think this is an important one. If you want to build businesses, or you want to live your life your way, or you don't want to build business, or if you want to own a home, you just want a higher standard of living, whatever it is you want, this is a freedom video. Part 2, Whitney, Webb, Glenn Beck. You need to be able to express your opinions, and you have the First Amendment protecting you that restrains the federal government from interfering in that if you disagree with the federal government. If you like our message, please like, comment, and subscribe. Clip 5.
Do you have hope at all that if the Republicans could win, it at least slows it down? I mean, I think people in the Republican, there's clearly people who go to Washington and actually believe it, and then are turned, or they go to Washington, they're already a dirtbag and they know what they're getting into.
Yeah.
And then there's a few that go and stand and are trying to hold the line.
But they're a minority.
A big minority.
Or they get forced out.
Correct.
If I'm not mistaken, Ron Johnson, right? Was the one that challenged a lot of COVID narratives.
Yes.
And I mean, even mainstream media, NPR, supposed to be objective, says, oh, he spreads conspiracy theories and his challenger's a rising star. And, you know, I mean, they're very clear about who they favor and who they don't. And if they don't want you to win, they'll gerrymander your district. They'll do some, I mean, there's lots of tools that they can use to prevent you from staying in office, and who knows what we'll see in the midterm elections. But ultimately, you know, those type of people that are willing to stand their ground and actually fight for the American people are very few. It doesn't really matter what party you're talking about. It's very small number when you consider the amount of votes needed to pass certain legislation. Yeah. So I think ultimately, the way out of this is for the American people to realize that yes, this is a fight between good and evil, but if you're looking for the good guys, stop looking at people that are put on the TV screens in front of you and start looking at your neighbors. Yeah. And the
answer is so clear. Local. Local.
Absolutely. This is really us versus them. It's not left versus right anymore. Yes. We are so far beyond that.
Yeah. So again, freedom's up to whom? Us. We talk about this all the time, local. What can you do about it? Well, get involved in your local community. Go to a men's group. Get involved with other men. Build friendships. Build a community. If you think you can just start a business and disengage, or you think you just move to a small plot, look, Mao, Stalin came after everybody. So if it goes totalitarian or communist or one world order, they will take your things if they want them. You will not be safe. So you may think, I'm going to disengage, just build my business and do my own thing. I don't believe that will work well. It's good to do because you'll have more control of your life if they don't win and we win. So it's a great thing to do for men, building a business. If that's your passion, if that's what you want to do, do what you want again. Again, do what you want. I'm just saying, if we disengage from politics and being involved, there are bigger chances they could take things. They've done it historically. Stalin and Mao took things from everybody, right? That's what communism does. It takes your property. And they do it today, right? They redistribute your income to give to whom they want, to divide us. But history shows that totalitarians will do that. We the people, we the states. Clip 6.
Question is, do we make it fast enough? I've been saying for a while, this is going to be a photo finish. I don't know which one's going to...
I don't think anyone really does, and I think it comes down to how much responsibility people are willing to take for their own lives, and you know how far communities are willing to go to ensure that they're self-reliant in the face of what we're facing. Well, if the banks are deplatforming people, you can't use their financial system. Are you going to go to the CBDC land where eventually you won't be able to spend money without like a microchip in your hand and all of this stuff?
Okay, so this is just, what's your strategy if you get debanked, if you need food? What do you need to do to take care of yourself and your family? Clip 7.
Do you think it can survive?
I think the central banks, the bankers, and the government will do everything they can to prevent a currency that threatens their power from actually being able to be used. And I think we're already seeing major efforts to make that the case. You know, they can make it illegal to, turn it into something else, illegal to use as tender. You know, they're looking at a lot of different options. But, some Bitcoiners, despite that, think it's totally possible, but I don't think I'm qualified to talk about that.
So in her opinion on Bitcoin, it's just opinion. She says she hasn't studied it. But look, FDR sees the goal. The big thing is to reduce the size of the federal government and its power. That's the case for limited federal government, not giving them more power. So she talks about parallel systems, keeping her family and herself self-sufficient. So that is a good thing to do. You don't want to be dependent upon corporations or government. They can take your freedom and control. She talks later about parallel systems. All right, let's go to clip 8.
I mean, it's really not just it's not just against freedom and all sorts of other values, right? It's against nature. It's against life, really. And so, I mean, if you're going to support that, I think people have to realize the consequences that come with that and exactly what it means when you are willing to give yourself over that kind of system, the implications of that. And I think a lot of people don't really realize that or take the time to think about it. And I think they should.
So this is a huge and bold statement, not just against freedom, against what? Nature, abasing life. Now that's an enormous statement. They say a lot of things, right? Strong warnings. And of course, we should be thinking and acting to protect freedom constantly. How are we going to protect freedom and restore our Constitution? Clip 9.
Ultimately, if you're looking at humanity, what do you like about humanity? It's the creativity, it's the vivaciousness. That's the stuff that I think we're fighting for. And a lot of the guys behind this want to eliminate that. I think a lot of transhumanism is aimed at creating like a drone-like workforce that will never be able to challenge their working conditions or ask for a bigger piece of the pie. And it's amazing to me that more people on the left don't see that if they're all about workers' rights and unionizing. All right, you have a chip in your brain. How's workers' rights going to go?
So I love this. Humanity, creativity, love. What about relationships and not a screen? Getting together in person with people and building deep friendships. Association. Without freedom, you could not go meet a friend for a cigar. You could not go shooting a gun when you wanted to without a car to get there. Well, you could take Uber right now, but what I'm saying is if they shut everything down. Without freedom, you could not build a business and enrich your life and make it better. In Brave New World, there's this quote, but I don't want comfort. I want God. I want poetry. I want real danger. I want freedom. I want goodness. I want sin. So again, control and taking away the beautiful things of life, it seems. Clip 10. This is huge too.
If your ultimate goal is total control, you need to have a population that has no national identity, that has no identity, period. That identity can be fluxed and can be moved whenever convenient for the people on top. If people have an identity and know who they are and know where they stand, they're a lot harder to control. And I think if you make all of that fluid at every level, it's a lot easier to exert your will over them because, they don't have their feet firmly on the ground, right?
I've thought of this several times during this podcast. I think this is the most powerful interview I've ever done.
So Glenn Beck says this is his most powerful interview he's ever done. The most powerful interview he's ever done. And he's been on the air a long time. And this does seem to be the goal of certain factions. Control. You have zero freedom. They have complete freedom. They get to do whatever they want, eat whatever they want, go wherever they want, but you can't. And if your ultimate goal is total control, gun control, that's control, right? And you need to defend yourself against the bad guys and think the bad guys are going to follow, or against a totalitarian government peacefully and lawfully. Climate change, we call it climate control. It's to control what you drive, how you live, what you did, not them flying in jets, not following the terrible climate accords that China and India won't follow ever. So what do you need to control the population, aside from climate change and gun control and all of this? You need a population that's easier to control. How would you do that? Well, get them confused about identity. And this is really wicked. Get boys and girls confused about identity, and it will be difficult to stand, right? If you're in flux, if you don't even know what you're today, and then Friday you think you can be something else. Look, men are men, women are women. You can't change that. But to confuse them works for the totalitarians. And also, I think it's a push to transhumanism, but that's, anyway. this push to transhumanism. But it's a great way to control you for sure. If you can't decide what you are, how do you stand? Clip 11.
I don't know how we went from, hey, government is like fire, with George Washington saying, if you're in control of it, it's good. If it's out of control, it'll burn you, to, hey, we're from the government. We'll educate your kids. How could you possibly think a government is going to raise kids who say, be skeptical of us?
Yeah, well, it's not, look at who has taken over our education system. You go back to things like the Rockefeller family or their role in healthcare. There's a lot of oligarch families that have very specific agendas that have really taken over government policy, and it's been like that for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And they're not elected. No one put them in charge. Actually, a lot of people used to hate the Rockefeller family until, they started a major PR campaign to rebrand themselves as philanthropists that a lot of other unpleasant people have since followed. The long-term consequences of that we are seeing today. But anyway, in terms of my background, I was, 21, 22, and just looking around, I'm 33, so I'm a millennial, right? And most people my age just, I could see a lot of this stuff, like we're too dependent on corporations that have a lot of nasty agendas or do bad things. There's a lot of issues, a lot of illegal wars, no accountability at the highest levels of government. If people my age don't start doing something, it's going to get really bad. And most people were like, stop talking about that. I have Netflix and beer, so I don't care. Everything's fine as long as, I'm comfortable, basically. Screw your politics or screw your concerns. And I just,
then wait,
I left the U.S. after that.
How can these same group of people, that generation, claim that no, you have to be an activist. You have to be involved in climate change. And, I'm going to sit down and glue myself to a wall like a moron. Yeah,
well, that's the activism that's put in front of young people today. And they're being told that's what activism is and that's the activism that's sort of in vogue because it's shown and treated by mainstream media as sticking it to the man.
So complacency is always one of my great concerns. People just want to do their own thing, which I understand. We all want to do some of our own things, but we have to pay attention. And freedom can slip away, and it's up to us to restore freedom. And I hear this all the time, just want to travel, just want to do my own thing, just want to watch games. Let's go to clip, and then we'll tie it up. Clip 12.
But really what it's about is controlling how much energy people can use. And if you control how much energy a household can use, you can control their economic activity. You also control how big their family can get. And I think that's ultimately what it's about. It's not about the environment for these people. And a lot of it is, Wall Street driven. You look at the United Nations, a lot of the people they put in charge of climate change policy. You have Mark Carney, former head of the Bank of England and the Bank of Canada, I believe. He's one of the guys that came in to rescue HSBC when they were caught money laundering for Mexican drug cartels. Not exactly a good guy, and it's very unlikely that he is driven by concern about the environment. And then the other person is Michael Bloomberg, former mayor of New York and billionaire guy. And so these are the people crafting the solutions. And just like COVID, you don't have time to think about what we're telling you. You just have to accept these solutions, because if you don't, something really, really bad will happen. And it's sort of a similar narrative to what, was played out with COVID and
everything, guns, cars, everything.
Yeah. So, people are it's fear driven to get people to accept policies they otherwise wouldn't accept because they're told this cataclysmic event is just down the line. And trust us, again, is the conclusion of that. So, there's people that agree with the narrative about climate change, and there's people that don't. And I'm not trying to really get in that space when I talk about this stuff. I'm trying to point out that the solutions are coming mostly from Wall Street, and they're things like carbon markets. They're things like debt for climate swaps, which back in the day used to be debt for land swaps, not about climate change, about other stuff. And then you have people like Larry Fink of BlackRock and Michael Bloomberg and Mark Carney coming together in something like GFAN saying, why don't we give Wall Street direct control of the IMF and the World Bank for climate change? You know,
right.
How can anyone on the left that's worried about climate change sign up on that? Why don't they talk about planting trees? Why isn't Bill Gates the largest, like private landowner in the U.S. now planting trees like crazy if he's so worried about carbon dioxide? He poo-poos the whole idea of planting trees as a way to combat climate change. It's just carbon markets and going to electric vehicles and all of this stuff. But electric vehicles necessitates mass mining, and a lot of that mining is in places that use child labor, or it's going to be so environmentally destructive you totally destroy the developing world, which these people on the left supposedly want to protect. You're going to totally destroy the environment.
Boom, control, control, control. Illegal wars, Congress, right, according to the Constitution, must declare war. So illegal wars, unconstitutional wars, we talk about this often, complacency. She talks about Netflix, and we want you to do what you want. You want to watch Netflix, watch it. Freedom. But if we don't stand up peacefully and lawfully for the Constitution and freedom, it might end. And you sacrificing our coal while they fly around in jets. Good points on energy. Look, you have cheap energy, your standard of living will increase. You'll have more disposable income. You'll have more money to make choices and do what you want and have children or buy a home and do what you wish. Cheap energy is one of the keys to a republic. She brings in Mark Carney, Michael Bloomberg. Anyway, fear, trust. How could you ever trust the government at this point from what you've seen? She talks about the IMF, carbon, Bill Gates not wanting to plant trees. And this is a good point that she makes. Perfect example. What should the goals be? Well, if that is his concern, planting trees, right? I mean, he can do what he wants too. But the point is, if it wasn't about control, he could just plant trees. It's really about control. Carbon market, creating a carbon market, electronic vehicles. What that does, she talks about to the land and how much of it destroys, but they're saying they want to protect the land and environment, but it destroys the environment, electric cars. So minerals, everything she goes into there, you heard it. Mark Carney looks at heads of the UN. So those are the people crafting the solution she goes into. Fear, drive people to accept these policies. Trust to me is hilarious. After the history, and you lived through it, COVID, carbon markets, debt for climate swaps, Larry Fink, she goes into all of these people. You can research them. Wanting direct control from Wall Street over the IMF and World Bank. And again, she has that planting trees. If you weren't for control, you plant trees, right? Or that could be an option, at least to be considered. But she says, Bill Gates, $35 trillion spent. Why would you ever trust the federal government with a digital currency? And through history. American principles, yes. But the federal government has gone beyond its enumerated powers, so we cannot trust them. Look at the $35 trillion in debt, look at our borders, and protect American sovereignty and the Constitution. Clip 13.
But ultimately, there's really no other way to be except to believe totally in a better future. We have to be totally committed to that if we're going to do it and do it quickly. And, I have a lot of hope that Americans, when things get really rough, will come together, at least most of us.
I think so, too.
But, in the environment we're in right now, I think it's incumbent on everyone, no matter how small or big your platform is, to speak up about what is happening. I think we are past the time about worrying about what people say about you, about at work or at home.
So we do have to be committed to a better future, a higher standard of living, a larger purpose than yourself, or a purpose to restore freedom, free will, the ability to run your life in the way you see fit and make your choices, and the hope that Americans will come together for freedom. Let's go to, and whenever you're out, you can be a voice, you can speak, you can talk to one person a week or one or two people a month and pass along the information about freedom and this information. We have the truth. We need to stand for freedom. Clip 14.
Well, the government wants to define what is true and what is not. I wrote a recent article about that in explaining some of the calls to basically make it such, and it's even if they try and do that and they try and say this is the state, the state is defining truth, and if you deviate from that, you are inciting violence, and all of that. But the problem is people at a visceral level gravitate toward the truth, so they hear it and they're like, oh, that makes sense, or they look at the sourcing. Or they investigate for themselves and they realize what is true and what is not. So, the state and Silicon Valley, there's really not that much space between them, to be honest, at this point. They can try and censor and manipulate and whatever, but ultimately people are going to gravitate towards what is true. And there's going to be a point where they're not going to be able to really, the tools they have now will not work.
So we talk about this all the time. Who wants to define truth? Who does define truth? Who must define truth? You must define truth. You must correct it where you see it. And she thinks they're going to not be able to do it. They don't have the tools anymore that people see through it. And you can see through all the lies. Men can be women, men can be pregnant, all these crazy lies. Only the government, if you put a gun zone sign up, a bad guy won't bring it into a gun zone, right? Let's go to clip 15.
That time will come once people stop trying to use these platforms that they are manipulating and start just going out and talking to people they know. We have to get offline, and we have to do it quickly. Maybe even get back, circulating in print stuff that's printed. I mean, we really have to stop being so dependent on these platforms that they're obviously manipulating. I think everyone knows about it, or they're censoring people from, and they're using it to profile you.
So yes, get out and meet people, talk to them, spread the truth, 1-to-1. This is one of our huge things in Restoring Men and History. The groups, we meet every month. Every group meets every month in person, and we may do an online too. Some people are online, but many people gather in one spot and they meet, and we meet for hours and hours and hours, and we build camaraderie and friendship. And I think men need friendship, most men, if not all. And we still need to engage online at this point. That's an important way to do that. So I think you need both in-person and online at this point, but you got to do some in-person groups and in-person one-to-ones and have some friends and be involved. So stand for freedom, not digital passports, not being forced into electric cars or smart cities. We drive where we want to drive, when we want to drive, and what vehicle we want to drive. We must, of course, be able to defend our families and homes with guns and stand peacefully and lawfully as Americans. We must be able to express our opinions, say no to Big Brother and unconstitutional big government. Look, if it's not an enumerated power, they don't have it. These factions are way open, and the Constitution stands in their way, right? The way they want to destroy the Constitution, it still, even though it's denigrated, stands in their way fully. And why do they want to take America down? Because America and its Constitution and its people, the strong people of America that still have a spirit of freedom, stand in their way still. We want to eat hamburgers and steaks, Americans will eat them. We want to build businesses, we'll build them. No central bank currencies. Instead, we want freedom and a constitution. Here's another quote from Brave New World. Most men and women will grow up to love their servitude and will never dream of revolution. Brave New World. So good questions asked. Stand for freedom. Churchill said, never give in, and we can't give in on freedom. Remember these words of Brave New World. Actual happiness always looks pretty squalid in comparison with the overcompensations for misery. And of course, stability isn't nearly so spectacular as instability. And being contented has none of the glamour of a good fight against misfortune, none of the picturesqueness of a struggle with temptation or fatal overthrow by passion or doubt. Happiness is never grand. Never give in. Thank you. If you like our message, please like, comment, and subscribe.